right, so it's 1:05, so I'll get started with some of the logistics. So as you probably saw, all of you should currently be on mute. We will be recording this event. We're hoping to post it on YouTube within the next few days. But we'll also be taking an attendance based off of everyone who's come, so we'll be able to send you a link to that once it's up as well, but it'll be on our main YouTube channel for the college, so the Rausser College YouTube channel. Some other things, if you have questions, feel free at any point in time to put any of your questions in the question and answer down at the bottom, the Q&A. Also, there will be some times for questions, and if you'd like to talk, I do have the ability to allow you to talk too, so you can say in the chat that you'd like to ask your question if it's longer or you want to provide more context. So yeah, feel free to use that. We'll also have a few polls, and we'll also be working after we've recorded this to make a closed caption file, an edited closed caption file with this presentation. Okay, now that we have some of that out of the way, the main point that we're going to talk about is based off of the Rausser College Honors website. So the main website is going to be nature.berkeley.edu/honors. That was posted to all of you in the chat. That's the main place to go and for all of the questions about the honors program. So here, let me go and share my screen. So we can see here, this is the Rausser College Honors Program page. It routes here to nature.berkeley.edu/honors, routes here to the honors program. And then we can see here some of the main things about the honors program. So as far as a bit of an overview of the college honors program, the honors program gives you a notation of honors in your major. So if you have two majors, you designate which major you would want it to be within the college. You get honors within your major noted on your diploma, which is separate from distinction. You earn distinction purely based off your GPA. So if you have like high honors, highest honors, that is purely based off of distinction, your GPA only, but you will receive honors in your major based off your participation in the program. Basically what the program is, it's student-initiated research spanning 2 separate semesters that are consecutive. 4 units in each semester that are graded units of research. So the idea is that you'll make a final senior thesis that spans 2 semesters, 4 units in each semester, and then based off of your successful completion of that, successfully passing both halves of your honors graded research, you will then be eligible to earn honors. To apply, you do need a 3.6 GPA. So as for a 3.6 GPA, if you were on campus in spring 2020, we have received approval to accept people with a 3.55 GPA, but you would need to still bring that up to a 3.6 by the time you graduate. So it's contingent on you having the 3.6 generally or 3.55 when you enter, but then still having that 3.6 when you graduate. You also will need to have completed a minimum of 60 semester units at Berkeley. So basically attaining junior or senior status. And then transfer students just need to complete 1 semester at Berkeley. It looks like we have a question here. Could it be 2 consecutive semesters? Yes, we will get to the semesters. Yes, so you will need to complete at least 1 semester as a transfer student, so you can't do it in your first semester, but each semester after that. As far as what the semesters look like, it is 2 consecutive semesters. Typically that would be most students start in fall, finish in spring, but you could start in spring, finish in fall, and now we just received approval for you to start in summer, finish in fall. But it still has to be fall or spring, has to be that last semester. So you can't start in spring, finish in summer. That wouldn't be an option. So it's either start fall, spring, or summer, but then you end in either a fall or a spring. And a good part of that is based off of the Honor Symposium. We do have that each semester, so that is one of the other requirements. As part of being in the honors program, you are expected to do 8 units of graded research, and within that is writing first a proposal of your research project, then a senior thesis, which is typically quite lengthy, often 40 pages or so is not uncommon, and then doing a final presentation in the Honor Symposium. In the Honor Symposium itself, you also will be eligible to earn the Tassios Mellis Medal. So we award that each semester to one or a couple based off of the types of projects of students that provide some of the best presentation based off of general presentation ability as well as the quality of the research. And that would be a medal that you could then wear at graduation. Also, some of the other things that you get from the honors program, in addition to having the honors denoted on your transcript, everyone who participates in the program is eligible to receive an honors stole as well. And then as far as some other questions here, yeah, so as far as what the research could look like, it can vary. So there could be lots of different types of research that you might have. We know that in the college there's a wide variety of majors. There's biologically based majors, social science majors. So it can be strict lab research, wet lab research, or it could be using economic techniques for an analysis and model development, or it could be interviews. There's lots of different ways that we've seen successful honors research before. And then, of course, some of the program requirements, you will need to maintain that GPA. You'll need to do an oral presentation in the honors symposium, write to your honors thesis and submit a copy to both your faculty sponsor and research mentor. And specifically for students in environmental sciences, we know that all environmental sciences, as part of their program, do a full year of research that is 4 units per semester anyways as part of their program. If you have the eligible GPA, then all environmental sciences students can choose to, instead of enrolling in SBUM 175A or 175L, you can enroll in H175A or H175L. And then we can talk more about the specifics of that, but basically if you have the relevant GPA, if you're in SBUM, you can automatically do that. And then, I see there's a couple questions going in the chat, so I'll answer this one, but for the future, if everyone can put questions in the question and answer. Because if we pursue our research and our project changes, do we need to inform honors? Not necessarily, unless there's been significant changes. One would be that as part of the program, if for some reason you're ineligible to do the second semester, you should let us know. We do require you to fill out an enrollment form each semester for that reason. So if you're unable to complete this second semester, then unfortunately you're ineligible for honors. Otherwise, if your research mentor is willing to adapt to the project and they still believe it is still worth 4 units of graded research, that's still acceptable. So we wouldn't necessarily need an update for that. And then as far as what that means also, so when we say 4 units of graded research, for every 1 unit you receive of research credit, that typically corresponds to 4 to 3 hours a week of outside work. That doesn't have to be every week. You could load a bunch of that over maybe like a Thanksgiving break, partway through the semester, or maybe there's 1 week where you do a lot on the research. But generally, if you're getting 4 units of research, then you should have 12 hours a week on average of work towards this project. As far as applying, let's see. Yeah, as far as applying, so we'll get to this other question in a second that just came in. We'll go over the honors enrollment form. That'll answer some other questions about what the proposal will look like. So the honors enrollment form, it's available here. It goes to a new link, and then I will also paste that link down in the chat. So there you can see what you would have to fill out each semester. Now in your first semester, you are required to submit a proposal. So I'll just go over the proposal for a minute. Well, we do have a couple of questions here about mentors. So I'll start there. So for the mentors, you can see the faculty research mentor, that is the main person that you're working with. It doesn't have to be a professor. It could be a grad student. It really could be it could be people outside of Berkeley. We've had a number of people go to UCSF. So someone who's going to help you mainly with the research, someone who's knowledgeable in that field. But then for the faculty sponsor, this has to be someone with a faculty appointment within the college. So someone who is a faculty within the college. So not an emeritus of Rausser, not a staff of Rausser, not a grad student, faculty of Rausser. Many of you will already be working with a faculty of Rausser, in which case they just need to fill out the faculty research mentor part. But if you are working with someone else, then you will need to find a faculty sponsor within the college. As far as the expectations for what a faculty sponsor does, the faculty sponsor is the person who will enter your grade in at the end of the semester. So it's up to you to set up a relationship between your research mentor and the faculty sponsor on what the expectations are for how you're going to be graded, how you're going to be evaluated, how often you're going to check in with each person. So it's clear at the end of the semester, the faculty sponsor knows what grade to give you for that project. Outside of that, there isn't a lot of other requirements of that faculty sponsor. So oftentimes we find that people find trouble getting someone who's a professor in the college who's willing to take on a full honors project, because sometimes it can be a significant commitment on their part. And that's why we recommend, if that's an issue, find someone in another department, find a grad student. And then for the faculty as sponsor, the main expectation then would just be for them to work with that person and have them be your main mentor, whereas they would be the person both on paper entering the grade and just making sure it, and if they want to be more involved in that, they can, but they wouldn't necessarily have to be. And then as far as the honors enrollment, I saw there's another question. I'll answer that in a little bit. But as far as the proposal goes for your first semester, what the proposal looks like. So for your proposal, we really recommend that you follow this specific format: project title, abstract background, objective, hypothesis, methods, timeline, results, references, and frequency of meetings of faculty research mentor. This will make it easiest for me because I'll be reading your proposals to see what your research is, and it'll also be a nice setup because you'll use likely a similar setup minus maybe the frequency of meetings with your advisor for your final thesis. So I really suggest that you use that for the enrollment. So then for the proposal, as far as other suggestions of what the proposal could look like, because I know that's always a question, if we go back to the website, you can see here archive of past projects, as well as our digital library of examples. So here in the digital library of examples, we can see that there's both information about proposals here, proposal samples that were accepted, as well as theses that were accepted. So I would suggest looking there if you're needing more guidance on what that proposal should look like. And then as far as other things about their proposal, I suggest that you submit your proposals early, but officially they're due on Friday, September 11th. So that's the Friday of the third week of instruction. Then after that, I'll be reviewing all the proposals. So I suggest that you do your proposals early, because if I have edits for you, you might not have much time to turn it around. You know, because I still would need to enroll everyone then by that following Wednesday. So I suggest turning it in early, working on it early in case any edits are needed. But if you provide a solid plan for your research, you include all of these general parts, and you have all the relevant signatures for your research, then that will likely be approved. And the question here, is it common to ask for edits? I know I've asked for a number of edits on people's before. Oftentimes it is because they were missing one of these parts. Usually the frequency of meetings with their faculty mentor I found is a common one that's been left off. So it is very likely that I would potentially ask you for edits if one of these is missing, or if it's unclear what you're going to do with the research or how you're going to get your data. That's something that I might ask you for some edits for, or to provide some clarification. And then how to submit it. You want to turn in the completed form to me. So my name is Anna Hoehenrieder. I'm the honors program coordinator. I suppose I should start with that. I'm the honors program coordinator, but you would want to send all emails about honors to cnrhonors@berkeley.edu. So that's the main place you'll want to send anything about honors, and I'll put that in the chat as well. If you have any questions, and that's also what I'll be using to email all of you at the end of this presentation once we have the recordings and following up with additional resources. And then let's see some other questions here. So we asked that. Someone asked, what's the difference between a hypothesis and expected results? That's a good question. I know that can look very similar depending on how you set it up. As far as the hypothesis goes, I think that's generally been a little bit more vague as far as what you're hoping to see. For the expected results, I'm also looking at how you're going to both display the data as well as some more specifics of what you would expect. And maybe if there's like a contingency plan, if your hypothesis is multi-pronged and something doesn't go as how you expected in the first part, what are the other options? What would you then do to change the project around? Because we know that that's part of research, sometimes based off of your availability of data or just based off of how early results go, you might have to change the project. So that's how I would generally differentiate those. And then it explains some of the same information here that we've already mentioned. We also had a question, how do you recommend finding a faculty sponsor? I would say that generally you would want to go with someone who you've had before in the college. That would be good. So even if you just had them for one class before, the expectation isn't too much for them as a faculty sponsor, considering they're mainly just working with your main research mentor to give you the grade. So I would say that's a good place to start. But if you have really some other difficulties getting a faculty sponsor, then you can email also CNR Honors and we can try to see what area you're looking for. But the faculty sponsor could be a faculty in any of the 5 departments. So NRES, NST, Nutritional Sciences, P&B, the Plant and Microbial Biology Department, ASPM, Environmental Science Policy and Management, and the ARE, so Agriculture and Resource Economics, that houses the Environmental Economics and Policy. And then it says here, do you need us to specify statistical analysis in our proposal? That depends on what you're mainly going to be doing. I would say generally good to include that, especially if you're mainly planning on doing an econometric analysis. We have seen a lot more in economics or environmental economic based theses, and if the statistical analysis is a central portion of you doing this project, then that would probably be good to specify. But I'd say generally, if you know how you're going to set up your project, you'll probably know how you're going to analyze the data based off of that setup. So I would suggest doing that. If you need to look into that more, that's something you can say, that maybe you'll look into like a bootstrapping technique or talk to your research mentor about other options for statistical analysis. But I would suggest including that. And then Suggestions on finding a research topic. Well, we know that many students get suggestions through working in a lab with faculty before. So the ideal situation is if you've already worked in a lab with someone, maybe you already have access to that lab data, you already have developed a relationship with the professor of that lab. That would be ideal because then you can see maybe some of the directions and get inspired by their research to go and use maybe some of those lab resources and go off in your own direction for this project. So that would be ideal. If not, if you don't have necessarily experience within a lab before, that's okay. We know that's not uncommon, especially within the social or environmental economics type of students. There, I would suggest also trying to look into part of this will probably go along with a mentor, having as much of an idea of a general topic that you're interested in. Maybe look at your past courses, general areas that you're interested in studying. Try to go in with as many specifics as possible, but then be open when you talk to that potential research mentor of that might change based off of the available data that you're able to have, based off of the other lab resources you're able to have, or maybe if they know that there's other research that's already been done that you should look into and seeing if you can further that in some way. You can also look at some of the past theses before and see if you want to do something similar, build off of that research. Obviously not exactly the same because that's already a project that we have out there, and some of these projects actually already did go through a publication cycle, so we wouldn't necessarily want you to follow exactly what they did, but using that as a starting point could be good. And then, can the faculty mentor be someone with specialized expertise in an outside government agency? Well, yes, sure, that would work. Because they don't have to be at UC Berkeley. So I think the main thing would be is if they're knowledgeable in the field, and if you feel like they would have the knowledge to accurately grade you based off of your research. As long as you still, of course, in that case, get a faculty sponsor within the college. And then, are students typically funded by their research mentor's lab? A lot of them, yes, especially in the biological sciences. We know if you're doing wet lab research, especially now, you really have to probably be in a lab and have a relationship with a lab in order to get the necessary equipment and the necessary clearance to do some of these experiments. So in that case, the lab is providing a lot of the materials. But we do also have other opportunities for funding. So it's a little bit late for this current semester, but many students who do this are also students who are approved for a student-initiated SPUR project. So if you go to the SPUR part of the website, so nature.berkeley.edu/SPUR, then you can see SPUR for students. You can apply for, I believe, up to $1,000 of SPUR funding. Again, that deadline has passed for this current semester. But there should be, yeah, so then here, yeah, I believe they'll update this later, but there should be more information here if you click on more. But before next semester, if you wanted to apply for funding for next semester, many students who applied for funding who have an honors thesis, a lot of them have been approved for SPUR funding. So if you needed funding to get a relevant data set, potentially, especially if you're not starting the project this semester in the future, or maybe you needed specific graphics imaging softwares, other types of lab equipment, that could all be places that you could get that funding. And then I will answer some of these other questions in a minute, but as far as some of the other questions here, so yeah, the main thing would be to submit this by the 11th. And then looks like we have one more question here. Any recommendations for how to fit a humanities-based project within the proposal guidelines? We have quite a few humanities-based projects. So there are some available on both the proposals and theses. As far as what that would involve, a lot of the ones we've had before is people setting up interviews with people. That could be virtual. We've seen that sometimes people do like a policy analysis and they use that as a basis for future policy recommendations. That's been fairly common within the humanities. So I would suggest looking at that past research for some examples. Certainly if you're looking at humanities as far as like the social sciences, there's been quite a bit of economics research within the past few semesters based off of modeling, and that definitely could be an option. But really it could be in any of those relevant areas. And I would also suggest talking to some of the faculty. We have great faculty who work in more humanities-based fields, and asking them, what does your research mainly look like within these fields? All right. And okay, so as far as other things here to help you with writing the proposal, so we have here links to the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarships. They have a number of resources about how to write research proposals, examples of research proposals and other research proposal guidelines. And they also have workshops available. So presentations about getting started, those are available. I believe they also have some events. Let me see here. So they have some info sessions. Looks like that's mainly later on. But yeah, they have this online how to write a research proposal workshop today from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m. So I don't know if any of you are free then, but that would be an option. But they also have an introductory workshop on the 8th, so still within time if you wanted to see that before writing your proposal, that could be an option. And they have quite a few other great emails here about how to get a positive response from a professor. So I really suggest using this as a resource for how to get more information about writing your proposal, as well as throughout the semester about refining your thesis. They have a number of different workshops all related to undergraduate research. So that again is linked from the main honors page here. And then there's of course also the sample honors proposals and theses there. And then we also mentioned the SPUR project. So excuse me, I think I said 1,000, but you could receive potentially up to 2,000 in scholarship money for depending on the needs of your project. And then as far as some other specifics, so simultaneous degree students, you are welcome to still do honors within your major here. And if you wanted, you could do another one separate project in your other major, as long as it's separate. Specifically for those environmental sciences students, you aren't required to do 2 projects. You can have your main project required for graduation be that H175L project. So that's still an option. There was also a question here, what's the difference between doing that and a student-led SPUR project? That can be the same as well. You can use your SPUR student-initiated funding towards this honors project. So you're not required to do 2 separate projects for that. And then as far as the other things that you should watch out for, we will be having a virtual symposium in December, I believe on the 11th of September. We'll be posting that shortly on the website with the exact date, but we will be hosting the symposium. So I encourage all of you, if you can, to come to that virtual symposium. We'll have more information about that on the links to that closer to the time, but I'd encourage all of you to go to that symposium to see what the researches look like, as well as to get information about how to do the final presentation. Because especially if you're hoping to start now, that will be the main time to see how others have delivered this presentation and some things to watch out for that you might want to copy or things that you might want to change for your own presentation. And then it looks like we have a question. Do honor students present in the symposium for both semesters? No, you only present in the symposium for at the end of your second semester. That's a good question. And then, do students ever get research published through their labs? Yes, that has definitely happened before. Students have gotten their research published through their labs for sure. And will the symposium be online this semester? Yes, it will. We're not planning on hosting it in person. It might be in person next semester, depending on public health guidelines, but this semester we are planning on hosting it virtually. And we'll have more information about that, but it'll likely be in a Zoom format, potentially a Zoom webinar format. And then I also have a few polls, if you would be willing to answer them for our own information. So I'll announce the first one, just so we know based off the attendance of what current year you are. Because remember, most students who will be doing this will be in their third or fourth year, but depending on the units you accrue, it is possible to do it earlier. All right, so if you could all fill out that poll. Looks like not everyone has voted yet, so I'll give it a couple more seconds. Great. All right, so I'll cut that off. So basically most students are in their fourth year here, 8 out of 13 responses. And then we also have about 3 in the junior year. That's a great time as well to start a project, especially maybe in your second semester. And then a couple freshmen and sophomores. So thank you for that information. Also, we would like to know, for those of you thinking about research, when is the time that you most likely think you'd start the research? All right, looks great. Looks like we have most of our responses here. Okay, great. So it looks like the vast majority of you are hoping to start this fall. That's great. We're definitely encouraging people. We know the research will look very different potentially this semester, so we're open to that. But we're glad that you're still hoping to do the research starting this semester. Also a few next spring, summer, and then a couple in fall 2022, likely the freshmen and sophomores. So that's great. And then one more question, just so we also know where you're at for the topic and faculty mentor. All right, great. It looks like we have most of the responses here. So I'll go ahead and end that. So it looks like a good number of you, 6 out of 13 already have a faculty mentor in mind, or maybe you just have a topic or just a faculty mentor, a few of you for that, and some of you are still exploring. So yep, those are all very good options. We encourage you, we're glad that you're here at any stage in the research. So that's great. And then we also just got another question and answer here. If I submit on September 10th or 11th, will I still be able to carry out my thesis if you ask for edits? Yes. So I won't flat out reject any of these proposals. We'll just ask for more edits. So, but you won't be approved until you've made those edits and you have, of course, the relevant signatures. As far as things that have been denied, even with the signatures and all the pieces, that's mainly been people who didn't have of actual faculty, so they were confused on who was having a faculty appointment, or the time frame was off. So maybe they planned to do this research over 2 full years, or maybe they wanted to do the research over just 1 semester. So those have been mainly the projects that haven't gone farther than the proposal stage. And then if we have more question and answers, you can always put those in here. Oh, approximately how long do you expect the proposal to be? That's a great question. So we generally expect this to be, we say here about 3 pages. I've seen most proposals are often closer to 8 or so pages based off of all these different components. So I would say at least 3, likely longer, and really the more fleshed out the better, because that will always help you as well for your final thesis. For the thesis, like I said, oftentimes that is roughly like at least 30 pages, 40 pages, double spaced. So the more fleshed out the better from the start is great. And as far as the length goes, the main thing I'm looking for is it specific on what you're doing, and does it answer all of these specific areas? All right, if there's other question and answer, you can put them there. Okay. So yeah, so again, I encourage you to look at the digital library of past participants for both the theses and proposals, and we will be consistently updating those too as we get other relevant proposals. It's also great if you send me your proposal, if you're willing to, if you could let me know if you're willing to add it to the list of proposals others could see. That would be also great to note on there so that we know whether to put it in available to everyone or just to have it for your own enrollment. And then also, will you be enrolled in the units within the 4th week of instruction? Yes, so if you submit it on time by the 11th, I will be definitely trying to enroll everyone by that following Wednesday, so the middle of the 4th week, which would be the 16th. Now, if there were edits needed, and especially if you send it to me slightly right around the 16th, then with your final edits, I can't guarantee that it'll necessarily be added within time to drop other courses. So I would say, like, definitely submit everything by the 11th to guarantee that possibility, but submit it earlier if you think that you're not sure, maybe you would want to do some edits on it. And that is a good reminder that within that 4th week of classes, you will be able to drop courses, but you won't be able to directly add other courses. So keep that in mind as well. If you're trying to add courses, you'll likely have to be directly enrolled into courses within that 4th week. The fee to drop a class, yes. So as you know, tomorrow is the deadline to drop classes without a fee. After that, the fee is $10 per class to drop. And based off of that, anyone who, we know that also the 11th is the last day to add without a fee. I will be trying to waive all fees for everyone who is submitted by the 11th, so that you won't receive those fees because I was still processing your honors enrollment. But if you submit it late or there's other edits, then you might include that $5 ad fee. And then, yeah, so as far as, I think there's a couple other specific questions here. I think someone just posted specifically about their GPA. I'd suggest that person just email me specifically with their question. I can't see exactly who that is because you're an anonymous attendee, but I would suggest just emailing me specifically if you have questions about GPA or other special circumstance exceptions. And then any other questions that people have? All right, if not, we do have another survey. This is for your own understanding. So if you could answer these questions, just so I can make sure that we're clear on these different parts of the requirements. I know this is a much longer survey, so if you need time, also if you finish it early, feel free to put other questions and answers as well. All right, so it looks like most of you, we have just a couple more that we're waiting on to fill out these questions. And then of course also I should mention, while some of you are still filling that out, we have it linked here, the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarships, but also VC Research is a great resource. It has other information about proposal writing guides and tools. And this is also a great way to look up potential professors in other areas, especially outside of the college. You can use that same database based off of their website to find other professors in particular interest areas. So that I would recommend both of those. Those again are linked in the text here on the main honors page, VC Research. Okay, so it looks like most people have voted. I'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, so it looks like most people voted there. Yes, great. So you all got that September 11th is the deadline to submit the honors enrollment form. It looks like one person was a little confused about the honors thesis with someone outside the college. So yes, the correct answer was yes, but you need a sponsor with a faculty appointment in the college. So you are eligible to do a thesis with someone outside the college. You'll just need a sponsor within the college. And then of course the biggest question, which was probably the hardest, which was select all the requirements. So specifically the requirements are 3.6 cumulative GPA. That doesn't have to be your major GPA. So if your major GPA is lower than that, that's still acceptable. Also, of course, participation in the honor symposium. You should submit a thesis at the end of the project. Yes, that is a requirement. I would suggest submitting that to both the honors email, cnrhonors@berkeley.edu, and also to your sponsor and researcher. But you're definitely required to give your sponsor and researcher that thesis. Application to the SPUR student-initiated projects, that is an option if you need funding, but that's only if you need funding. The main reason to do that would be if you wanted funding from the SPUR pot of funding. If your lab has separate funding, or if you don't need funding based off the type of your research, that would not be a requirement. And then of course, commitment over 2 consecutive semesters of 4 units per semester is a requirement. You are not required to participate in the college research showcase, but that is an option. We are planning on having the research showcase this semester, and that's another place that I recommend that you go. For the showcase here, if you go to academics and then to events and programs, you can see information about the showcase here. So that's going to be November 13th from 11 to 1 p.m. You can see other research that people are doing, and we encourage you to potentially do that, but you are not required to. And we know that mainly for the showcase, that's also sometimes known as the poster session. We know that's a bit different format than the symposium, which is going to be more of a verbal presentation. And then of course, submit honors enrollment form at the beginning of both semesters. That is a requirement. You are required to submit this enrollment form at the beginning of both semesters. In the first semester, you need a proposal. In the second semester, you don't need a proposal, but you do need to still have signatures both from your research mentor or sponsor. We mainly require that in the case that you need to switch a sponsor because someone was on sabbatical or in other circumstances. But even if everything's the same, we still request that they sign off on this, because we don't want a situation where you don't get a grade or there's a miscommunication because they didn't realize that you were still enrolled in this honors research with them. Then it looks like we had another couple of questions come in as we were doing that. So it says you have to do 2 semesters of research. Does the research have to be about EEP if you are an EEP major? No, it doesn't necessarily have to be directly within your major, but we would suggest that it has to be generally related to the fields of study. So if there was a similar interest, especially within the college, we know that oftentimes students, especially within biology, they might not do something that exactly is pure nutritional science. Maybe it's slightly integrated biology, but it's related in some way. That still is acceptable, but we would say that it should be at least in some way related to the mission and research values of the college. And then someone else had a question. If they have a follow-up question before submitting, should they send it to cnrhonors@berkeley.edu? Yes, definitely. So any questions should all go to cnrhonors@berkeley.edu. All right, any other question and answers? Also, if someone wants to say their question, you can post in the chat that you'd want to talk. I can give you the ability to talk as well for those questions. All right, so while we're waiting, in case people have questions, you can still submit those. But as far as the other information, of course, the main place we again went to today was nature.berkeley.edu/honors. That is the shortcut to get to that program, which has all the information we talked about today, including the enrollment form updated for this year, along with the deadline of September 11th. And it has those other links to both the Office of Undergraduate Research and Scholarships, as well as the sample honors proposals and theses, and other relevant information about the SPUR program, as well as other past participants. All right, so I'll leave this open for another few minutes for questions. And again, once we get this official recording off of the webinar account, we will be posting this on our YouTube. And based off of the attendees, we should be able to pull an attendee report to send it to you directly with some other relevant information. And then it looks like someone sent a more specific question of GPA. I would suggest either hanging back to the end or sending that specifically. So any questions about GPA or other questions about exceptions to the requirement, please email those to the honors email. All right, so thank you to all of you who are attending. I know that many of you are signing off now, but I'll just leave it open for another minute in case anyone else has any questions.